Think about the last time you were in a really deep, dreamless sleep. You had no name, you had no job.
Right, no worries, no political affiliation, no history.
Exactly. For roughly 8 hours, the whole concept of you, it completely ceased to exist. Yet the second your eyes opened, all of your stress, your memories, your complex identity, it all flooded back into your brain in like a fraction of a millisecond.
Yeah, it's instant.
So what exactly turned the lights back on? I mean, who or what was waiting in the dark to reboot the system?
Man, that's one of the most haunting mysteries of human psychology, honestly, and really of existence itself.
Yeah.
Because we've built these towering civilizations, mapped the human genome, launched telescopes to the edge of the universe. Yet that single intimate question, who are we when the world falls away, it still leaves us grasping at thin air.
And that search for the ultimate truth of the self is the focus of our deep dive today. We're looking at a truly fascinating source, an intellectual Adda.
Right. And for those who might not be familiar, Anada isn't just like a casual chat over coffee.
No, not at all.
It's this centuries-old cultural staple in South Asia. It's a rich, informal, but really rigorous tradition of philosophical discourse.
Yeah, and this particular Adda was hosted by Dr. Moin. And his mission was to explore these eternal questions of life alongside two men he affectionately calls unsung heroes.
Yeah, and these two guys bring highly distinct lenses to this ancient question. First, we have Mollah Bhai. He's described as a quiet, devoted teacher, a lifelong critical thinker.
The analytical guy.
Exactly. He represents the analytical mind, right?
Wow.
The person who just refuses to accept ready-made, packaged answers. And contrasting him is Moli Bhai, who is a poet, a journalist, and an artist.
So he approaches reality not just by analyzing it, but by, feeling it, searching for those profound metaphors encoded in the physical world.
Right. And the mission of their Adda and our mission today, so to guide you through this quest for the fundamental truths of life. And I have to say, their method is incredibly ambitious.
Oh, it's massive. They are weaving together astrophysics, quantum mechanics, ancient Eastern philosophy, and verses from the Quran into this one massive cohesive framework.
But before we go further into that framework, we really need to establish a clear baseline for our listeners, because our source material heavily references religious texts, specifically the Quran, alongside hard empirical science and mysticism.
Right. It covers a lot of ground.
It does. And as always, our goal here is strictly to impartially report on these viewpoints. We're not taking sides, we're not evaluating theological truth, or endorsing any specific religious claims.
Yep.
Our focus is purely on unpacking the profound philosophical and structural ideas presented by the speakers in this specific conversation.
Yeah, we're here for the philosophical heavy lifting, taking these ideas purely on their intellectual merit. So to start this journey of finding out who we are, Mollah Bhai actually suggests doing something pretty counterintuitive. We start by looking outward at the physical universe before we try to look inward. He traces the sheer, terrifying scale of the macro world. He asks us to look past our atmosphere, out to the planets, past the boundary of our solar system, and into the Milky Way.
Which is just unfathomably huge.
Right. A structure containing hundreds of billions of stars, spanning 100,000 light years, and that's just one galaxy among billions of others, swimming in dark matter and supermassive black holes.
Now, the intention behind invoking that sheer scale, it's to intentionally disorient you. By establishing the overwhelming, massive reality of the physical universe, Mollah Bhai sets up this really jarring pivot.
Yeah, he completely drops the floor out from under you.
He does. He immediately drops from the macro scale down to the quantum microscale. He brings up concepts like the Double-Slit Experiment and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle.
Right.
And the core argument he draws from quantum mechanics is that at a subatomic level, a particle does not exist in a fixed, definite physical state until it is observed.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because it is a wild concept that sounds more like magic than physics if we don't look at the mechanics. Why does observation actually matter?
Well, the crucial detail that gets missed in pop science summaries is what observation actually means in physics. When physicists use a detector to observe a particle, say an electron going through a slit, that detector has to physically interact with the electron to gather data.
Right, usually by bouncing a photon of light off of it.
Exactly, but before that interaction, the electron exists mathematically as a wave function. It's just a smear of infinite probabilities of where it could be.
Well,
But the moment the detector interacts with it, bam.
the wave function collapses.
Yes. The probability is forced to pick a definitive state, becoming a solid physical particle in a specific location. Observation isn't just passively looking, it's an interaction that forces reality to render itself.
Rendering itself, yes. I mean, think of reality like a massive multiplayer video game environment.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. The digital world around your character isn't actually fully built out. It's not rendering millions of leaves on trees behind you when you aren't looking.
Because that would completely crash the server.
Exactly. The heavy graphics, the lighting, the solid walls, they only render into high-resolution existence when your player's camera pans over to look at them. Until you look, it's all just raw code and mathematical probabilities waiting in the background.
Waiting for an observer.
Right. And Mollah Bhai is pointing out that cutting-edge physics suggests the real universe operates on a remarkably similar principle.
And taking that mechanism into account raises a staggering question. If the foundational building blocks of the universe require an observer's interaction to collapse from probability into a fixed state, how objective is the physical world, really?
Yeah, is it even there?
Right. And in the Adda, Mollah Bhai draws a parallel between this phenomenon and ancient spiritual texts. He references verses from the Quran, specifically in Surah Al-Hadid and Surah An-Nur, which describe the material world as a play, an illusion, or a mirage in the desert.
Okay, but I have to push back here. Because calling the universe an illusion or a mirage feels like a bit of a philosophical trap.
How so?
Well, if I see a mirage of water in the desert, it can't quench my thirst. But if a physical truck is speeding toward me, it's very real, and it will hurt me whether I'm observing the quantum state of its bumper or not.
Right. That is the classic counterargument. But Mollah Bhai isn't suggesting the truck doesn't exist. The concept of the mirage here doesn't mean the world is a hallucination. It means its nature is deceptive.
Okay, deceptive how?
You perceive the truck as solid matter, right? But at the quantum level, it is 99.999% empty space, held together by vibrating fields of probability. The illusion is our perception of permanence and solidity.
Ah, I see.
Both quantum mechanics and these ancient texts are pointing toward the same idea. The physical world is not the ultimate independent truth. It's a transient dependent phenomenon that shifts based on how consciousness interacts with it.
Wow.
What?
Okay, so if the physical universe is a shifting projection, that creates a terrifying paradox for us.
Yeah.
Because if the stars, the planets, and the truck are all part of this rendered reality, what about my own hands? Am I just a mirage too?
Yeah.
If we can't find our true identity out there in the cosmos, we are basically forced to look inward.
Which is exactly the pivot Moli Bhai makes in the conversation. If the external universe is a dependent projection, we have to find the independent observer.
Right, the one looking at the screen.
Exactly. He introduces a profound method of self-inquiry rooted in Eastern philosophy known as neti-neti. It translates from Sanskrit as not this, not this. It's a rigorous process of elimination.
Just stripping things away.
Right. The logic is simple. The ultimate truth, the true I, must be permanent. Therefore, anything that changes cannot be the true self.
So you apply neti-neti to your own physical existence. You look at your body. The body you possessed as a newborn is biologically completely different from the body you had as a teenager.
Literally different cells.
Exactly. Every cell replaces itself over time. So, because your physical form is constantly in flux, growing and decaying, it fails the test of permanence. Not this, not this. You are not your body.
And naturally, if you aren't the physical vessel, you assume, well, I must be the mind. But Moli Bhai points out that the mind is even more volatile than the body. Your thoughts, your deeply held beliefs, your anxieties, they shift constantly.
Wow, absolutely.
The things that defined your personality 10 years ago might feel completely alien to you today. So, neti-neti, you are not your mind, and you are not your thoughts.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the traditional way to explain this is peeling onion, right? Finding nothing at the center. But let's upgrade that metaphor for the modern era. Think about factory resetting a smartphone.
Okay, I like this.
You delete the social media apps that represent shedding your social status. You wipe the photo gallery there, go all your personal memories. You delete the contacts there, go your relationships. If you keep wiping data, what are you actually left with?
You're left with a blank operating system. A screen that is powered on, aware, and waiting for input, but holding no personal data whatsoever.
Exactly.
To ground this concept, Moli Bhai asks the group to examine the 3 states of human consciousness recognized in ancient philosophy. The waking state, where you engage the physical world. The dreaming state, where the physical body sleeps but the mind projects its own internal reality.
Right.
And finally, sushupti, the state of deep, dreamless sleep you mentioned at the start of our deep dive.
Yeah, in sushupti, the smartphone is entirely wiped. You're completely unconscious.
Yeah.
You have no dreams, no job, no name, no existential dread. Your entire constructed identity is fully offline.
Offline and gone.
Yet you don't cease to exist. You wake up and remember that you had a good night's sleep. So who is doing the remembering if the you with a name and a job was offline?
The entity doing the remembering is what philosophers call the silent witness. When you wake up and the data floods back into the smartphone, that silent witness is the pure consciousness that was waiting in the background.
The screen that never turned off?
Exactly. Moli Bhai argues that this is the true self. The blank operating system isn't an empty, meaningless void. It is the fundamental, unblemished awareness that allows you to experience the world at all. It's the unchanged screen upon which the chaotic movie of your life is projected.
The screen never changes, whether it's displaying a comedy, a tragedy, or a horror film. So we've broken down human consciousness to a blank witnessing state. How does this internal operating system relate to the massive physical universe we started with? Moli Bhai draws a connection here that honestly gave me pause.
It's mind-blowing. The connection lies in the structure of reality itself. If you take any solid object and break it down, you go from molecules to atoms. You split the atom into the nucleus and electrons, smash those, and you get protons and neutrons, then quarks and gluons.
Getting smaller and smaller.
Right. But if you go all the way down to the absolute basement of quantum physics, you don't find tiny, hard billiard balls of matter. You find quantum field theory.
Meaning the absolute bottom of physical reality isn't stuff. It's just vibrating fields of potential energy. It's a localized nothingness out of which temporary physical properties sort of pop into existence.
Yes, and that is the crucial alignment. The deepest verifiable truth of the macro universe is a field of pure potential. And the deepest truth of our internal identity found through Neti Neti is a silent field of pure awareness.
Wow.
The macro and the micro mirror each other perfectly.
So what does this all mean for us? Moli Bhai brings in perspectives from heavyweights of Eastern mysticism like Sri Ramakrishna and the legendary ball poet Lalan Shah to make sense of this alignment. They introduce this framework dividing human experience into two distinct versions of the self.
Right, the Kacha Ami and the Paka Ami.
Yeah, the Kacha Ami, which translates to the raw eye, and the Paka Ami, which is the ripe eye.
Lalan Shah is a fascinating figure to invoke here. He was a 19th century mystic who actively rejected conventional religious boundaries, caste systems, formal dogmas, focusing entirely on this inner search for the universal self.
A true rebel.
Very much so. When he speaks of the raw I, he's talking about the ego, the constructed identity that fiercely defends its name, its wealth, and its opinions.
Let me put this in a way that's really easy to visualize. The raw I is the character you are playing in a theater production. It's the elaborate costume, the dramatic lines you memorize, the fake emotional stakes of the scene. And we spend our whole lives fiercely defending the honor of this fictional character.
Oh, constantly.
Right. But the ripe eye is the actual actor underneath the costume. The actor doesn't die when the play ends and the character's story concludes.
What's fascinating here is how reaching this ripe eye completely shatters our traditional understanding of knowledge. Moli Bhai cites Lalan Shah's warning seeking worldly knowledge or memorizing scriptures without first knowing your true I is like a madman blindly reciting words.
Because it's just surface level?
Well, more fundamentally, it's because all standard human knowledge requires duality. It requires an observer and an observed object, the book, the star, the atom. There's always a separation.
Right. There always has to be a me looking at an it.
Oh.
But reaching the ripe eye, tapping into that pure consciousness, requires collapsing that duality. You have to realize that the observed and the observed are emerging from the exact same quantum field, the same underlying source.
It is a state of singular awareness.
And you can't use your brain to think your way into it because thought itself is just another object appearing on the blank screen.
It is entirely beyond the intellect. And that brings us to the inevitable friction of this entire philosophy.
Right, because it's very easy to sit in an armchair, stroke your chin, and declare the ego an illusion. I mean, it sounds highly enlightened. But tomorrow morning, my alarm is going to go off.
Yeah, the real world calls.
I have to go to work, pay my mortgage, deal with stressful people. When your heart gets broken or you lose your job, that raw eye doesn't feel like a mirage. It feels agonizingly real. So how does realizing we are essentially nothing help us survive in a hyper-competitive modern world? Do we just give up and move to a cave?
That is the ultimate test of any philosophy, right? Can it withstand the friction of daily life? Moli Bhai addresses this not by suggesting we abandon the world, but by changing our relationship to it. He offers what is arguably the most powerful analogy of the entire Adda, the ocean and the wave.
I love this one.
Imagine a vast, infinite ocean. Suddenly, a wave swells up on the surface. That wave looks around, sees other waves, and develops an ego. It says, I am a mighty wave. My name is Mollah. I am taller than that wave over there. I am moving faster, and I am a completely separate, independent entity.
But the tragedy of the wave is its delusion. Every single drop of its form is entirely made of ocean water. It has never been separate from the ocean, not for a fraction of a millisecond.
Right.
When the wave inevitably crashes on the shore, the wave itself doesn't die. It merely loses its temporary shape and returns to the vastness it was always a part of. The speakers in the Adda suggest that the true purpose of human life is this specific self-discovery. It's the journey of the wave realizing it's actually the water. Think about the immense practical relief in that realization. If you truly internalize that you are a temporary expression of an infinite ocean, how much of your daily grinding anxiety just evaporates?
Oh, tons of it.
The stress about climbing the corporate ladder, agonizing over your social status, or fiercely protecting your political identity suddenly, it just looks like a wave having a panic attack about how pointy its crest is.
It reframes existence entirely. And discovering that your raw I is a temporary shape doesn't lead to nihilism. Because when the rigid defensive boundaries of the ego drop away, what naturally fills that space is profound empathy.
Yeah, connection.
You realize that showing kindness to a stranger isn't a transaction between two separate life forms. It's simply serving another part of yourself. You are both made of the exact same water.
That shift in perspective is so radical that it actually leads Dr. Moin and his guests to reinterpret deeply entrenched religious practices. For example, they look at zakat, which is widely practiced in Islam as the giving of a portion of your wealth to charity. Moli Bhai suggests an esoteric layer to this. True zakat isn't just handing over currency. The ultimate charity is sacrificing the raw I. It is giving up the ego itself.
And they apply a similar lens to salat, the practice of prayer. Instead of viewing it merely as a physical ritual or the petition to a distant deity, salat is framed as the continuous, conscious surrender of the temporary worldly identity to the ultimate universal truth.
Wow.
They invoke the legendary Sufi mystic Mansur al-Hallaj, who was executed for declaring An al-Haq, I am the truth. Conventional authorities thought he was claiming his physical body was God, but through the lens of this Adda, Hallaj was simply a drop of water that had fully realized it was the ocean.
We have covered some intense metaphysical territory today. To summarize this epic journey mapped out by Dr. Moin, Mollah Bhai, and Moli Bhai, we started by looking at the staggering scale of the universe, only to find that quantum mechanics suggests physical reality is more of a rendered mirage of probabilities than a solid, independent truth.
Right, the external anchor falls away.
Exactly. So, stripped of an external anchor, we turned inward. We used the process of neti-neti to factory reset our identity, peeling away the changing layers of the body and mind until we found the silent witness, the pure consciousness waiting in the dark of our deep sleep.
And we connected that internal blank slate to the vibrating quantum fields of the universe, learning to distinguish between the raw I, the stressed-out character we play on stage, and the ripe I, the eternal actor beneath the costume.
Yeah.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this Adda isn't just a late-night debate for academics. Understanding the difference between your raw I and your ripe I fundamentally rewrites your operating system.
It changes everything.
It really does. It changes your reaction to every failure, every insult, and every success. It dismantles the terror of losing your identity because it proves that who you really are cannot possibly be lost or destroyed.
Which frees you up to actually play the game of life with joy rather than existential dread. So I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to explore as you go about the rest of your week. The next time you find yourself entirely overwhelmed by the chaos of your day, maybe you're stuck in gridlock traffic, spiraling over a deadline, or caught in a bitter argument, take one deep breath and ask yourself, is the ocean actually stressed right now? Or is it just the wave forgetting what it really is?